we like to keep things simple. So if you're a company, you're looking to double your revenue, come find us. Ultimately, what does that mean? That means that we offer a variety of services. Anything that can support the small business lifecycle on a fractional support basis, that's the type of support we provide. And I was with a small business early in my career, and what I noticed is that the team always struggled with that infrastructure support because of the lack of funding, the lack of resources, the lack of capital, et cetera. And if you see people like myself or others associated with Eric, you know they're good people, right? So is kind of stick within that core network and navigate that space versus trying to find a lot of random companies or a lot of random consultants out there. Not that they're not good, but if you've got an ecosystem to work within and there's a lot of good companies already working together, the chances are they're probably already solving a lot of the potential challenges that you may run into at any stage of your growth. And so you've got a great ecosystem here with Eric Coffie.
All right, John, we're live. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us who you are.
John Cook, CEO, Strategic Growth Advisors. Looking forward to being with you and your team next week, Eric, in Miami. So super excited.
No, John. Yeah, no, I'm excited as well. And I know we came on before and we talked a little bit about the what you guys are doing over there at SGA. That's what I call you guys, Strategic Growth Advisors. But I really, today I want to talk about what it is and how you're helping small businesses and what you're doing for them, because I know that you guys have been super successful in working and taking a lot of small firms and helping them grow and scale. So can we talk a little bit about some of the great work that you're doing over there at Strategic Growth Advisors?
Well, what I would start off with, Eric, is we like to keep things simple. So if you're a company, you're looking to double your revenue, come find us, right? That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Um, Ultimately, what does that mean? That means that we offer a variety of services, all the way from contract administration to small business advisory support, proposals, marketing, HR, business development, marketing, anything that can support the small business lifecycle on a fractional support basis. That's the type of support we provide. And once that infrastructure is plugged in on a fractional support, which helps those companies lower that overall overhead, success starts to occur.
I like that. Now, it's interesting because I hear about like fractional CFOs and fractional like outsourced accounting services. Is that something similar to like outsourcing your accounting, like your CPA or law firm?
It is, but I would say the difference in our business model and a lot of the other companies in the market is we literally take everything from end to end. So a lot of times you go to a fractional accounting firm or CPA, and then you have to go to another company for business development or another company for small business advisor, another company for contract support. We literally have everything all under one umbrella from end to end. We've got probably 20 different distinct lines of businesses with individuals that are leading each of those specific swim lane support functions. And so, yes, it is the same, except we're exclusively focused on the government contracting space and primarily focused on small business companies and helping small business owners and executive teams scale.
No, I love that. I love that. Now, let's talk about, you said proposal writing was one of your areas.
Yeah, proposal writing. I mean, we've got a team of approximately 20 proposal writers, graphic artists, technical writers. I mean, you name it. I mean, we're dealing with some. We'll deal with a proposal that's maybe $5,000, $10,000 a cost expenditure to the client, all the way up to maybe $150,000, $200,000 proposal, and some of
Wow.
the very big packages. It just really depends on the size of effort that the clients are pursuing. But what happens is the team has access to that entire fractional support team, and they don't need to carry the full-time proposal resources on staff if they're not to that point. And a lot of times we find a lot of success in companies that are, 2, 5, 10, $15 million that are trying to get to the next level. And they have a lot of individuals in their organization wearing these many hats. And that works for a period of time, but then there's a period of time where the volume starts to be so great, you have a choice: hire someone or leverage an outsourced team. So we have hundreds of clients across the board that support that we support all of the various support functions that I've mentioned to you. And so we've got tremendous success stories. In fact, we will be I'll be the moderator for a Tribal 8A panel. We also work with a lot of Tribal 8As, and that's one of the additional values that we bring in addition to our shared services. We also have a lot of tribal 8As that are our clients in our portfolio that are achieving tremendous success. And so a lot of these small companies come into the portfolio working with us, and then we try to do matchmaking. We try to get those companies tied to some of the tribal 8As that are in our system. And sometimes there's stories in the market, as we all know, anyone that's been in government contracting space, where maybe there wasn't the best experience with one of the tribes that they worked with, and that's a quite a bit different story here with us. With the relationships that we have, which people will come to understand during the tribal panel. We don't want to go into the great detail here on this call.
Nice. Thank you for that. Now, what size companies, for me, you said double my revenues. What kind of companies are you looking for, or do you typically work with? What are you starting with? What's my minimum size? Let's say that.
I think the minimum size where we really have found that it works pretty well is, let's call it $500,000 to $1 million, right? So pretty small companies.
Yep.
And what it is you kind of get to that point where the owner's not able to do everything, right?
Okay.
Because there's a period of time that the owner has to do everything, the CEO has to do everything from a cash flow perspective, growth, et cetera. But once they get to a certain point that they simply can't handle all the tasks themselves anymore, and try to find business development, try to run the back office, all of those types of things. That's where we see a lot of our entry point is, maybe around $500,000 to $1 million. The entry point could be at any level, but probably the minimum is around $500,000 to $1 million. And then I would say the sweet spot for all the various services, maybe up to, maybe let's call it maybe 10 million or so, something in that range. We can go higher because, there's even companies that we support that are drastically larger. And those companies, they don't need all of the services that we provide because they've already built a very robust infrastructure in a lot of cases, because they've graduated beyond that fractional support, so to speak. But they also still leverage fractional on a as needed basis. For example, they may have proposal surge, in the busy season, where they don't want to hire a bunch of new resources and they'll reach proposals, or maybe our pricing team, or maybe our marketing team, or whatever you have. But a lot of the smaller companies, our advice to them is, hey, listen, let's look at the success stories that we've had. Let's talk to some of our clients that have achieved the success, and then let's consider leveraging our ecosystem that we built here in our shared services for some of these a la carte services that we have to offer to help these companies scale and keep their overheads down.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you get here? What made you start doing a shared services model?
Well, so frankly, I got burnt out in the corporate world, in the meat grinder. So I was in the large corporate world for a number of years, spent close to 20 years in the DC area. And then my last post was running a very large line of business for a C5 ISR global systems integrator. Like a lot of people, you have kids, you start to, grow a family, and the work-life balance is somewhat out of whack for all of us that are workaholics. And, so you're trying to balance all of that stuff with raising the family. And so I was fortunate enough to link up with some individuals that had started doing this support of some of the tribal 8As, and on a much smaller scale at that point in time, and then putting the team together and bringing in some of the various resources that we brought in and some of the acquisitions, et cetera. We've really been able to scale this fractional support. So we believe that this is a need in the market, and we also believe that we have a very specific service offering that frankly doesn't exist anywhere else.
Interesting. And what types of contracts did you work on when you're working for the corporation?
Very large contracts, anything from infrastructure contracts. Naval Information Warfare Center was one of our largest clients. I think one of the largest contracts that we had, individual awarded contract as a large business, was about close to $1 billion single source award. This is before NIWC, when they used to be called SPAWAR, before they started issuing multi-award contracts. Many years ago, they used to issue a lot of single source award type contracts, even to large businesses. But they changed that. They changed that probably 10, 15 years ago. A lot of high tech projects, a lot of layer 1, layer 2, layer 3 systems. A large chunk of the overall business, I didn't have a tremendous amount of involvement in this, but a large chunk of a lot of the business was a lot of the shipboard installation contracts. That was still under that large contract that we had. And in fact, I also did quite a bit of stuff in the commercial space because we had some newer technologies that we were taking into a variety of verticals, hospitality being one, large public venues and things like that. But, in the nutshell, it's all been in defense contracting, a lot of the various classified programs. Just like anyone else, I think in the DC area, you find yourself probably supporting almost all of the three-letter agencies and what have you. If you spend close to 20 years and you have mild success, you can check those boxes.
Nice. No, that's great. Now, it's interesting that you worked with a large business and now you came back to help small businesses. Why come back to work with small businesses?
So, I think that working with a lot of the small businesses, I was with a small business early in my career, and what I noticed is that the team always struggled with that infrastructure support because of the lack of funding, the lack of resources, the lack of capital, et cetera, and whatever you have. And so, I think we've identified a specific niche where we can add tremendous value to a lot of the small business companies as it relates to working with the tribes. That's extremely rewarding as we start to grow these businesses because we typically will find ourselves working with some of the smaller tribes in the U.S. that don't necessarily have the economic development program established as maybe some of the larger ones with some of the casinos and multiple sources of income. And so when we're able to grow these businesses and contribute to their success, it's extremely rewarding for very large sums of money to go back to the tribes that we support. And we're truly making a difference. And so you really take that mindset and then apply that to working with some of the small business owners that we work with as well and help them achieve success much more rapidly than they would have achieved on their own. It's just extremely rewarding to be able to give back and take a lot of the knowledge gained in the large corporate world and pass this along to a lot of small business entrepreneurs that are starting out, that are eager to continue their journey of success.
So when we thank you for that. But when we get to the actual, what do we expect to learn when we come to your tribal panel? What do people expect to hear from you guys? What can we gain from sitting in on that session?
I think what they're going to learn, I think what the audience will learn is a lot of times, a lot of the small businesses, they don't know how to enter into that space, right? They don't know what the entry point is. Maybe they've heard stories in the past about how people had not so pleasant relationships, maybe with tribes, for whatever the case may be. I think what you learn in this session is really some of the tactical steps. How do you get this stuff done, right? It's right to talk about let's keep it simple, double the revenue, and that's what we should do, right? But when we get into these sessions and we have a little bit more time, then we can dig into the details and we talk about what does that mean? How do you double your revenue? How do you work with these Native American tribes? How do you bring relationships into this ecosystem to secure large, high ceiling IDIQs? And I think the best part about it is you'll hear real-time examples about how these individuals and these companies have had tremendous success in working with small businesses, like a lot of the small businesses that will be there. What I've learned in my career is a lot of individuals that start small business companies in the government contracting space, they typically have at least one or two really good contact in the government. But a lot of times they're not able to monetize that because they don't have the right contract vehicles. They don't have the right status, whatever the case may be. They haven't gotten their certifications completed yet. And so this is really talking about, in line of your conference theme, I believe, is bridging the gap between the tribal 8As in this scenario and the small businesses to help the small business start to scale much more rapidly. So we'll get into a lot of details around that. There will probably be 15, 20 minutes for open Q&A. So I encourage everyone, come with your questions, be ready to ask. And then we have matchmaking after the fact. And so we'll be supporting some of our tribal clients in the matchmaking. We'll also have a booth, an SGA booth actually set up, Plus, we'll have a matchmaking table as well. And so, just look for me. I'll have a team. I've got a phenomenal team that's working with me, probably 5 or 6 people from our side that will be there. And as you know, Eric, as the CEO, you're nothing without your team. And so find me. I know lots of conversations in a short period of time, and I'll make sure to connect you guys with some of the subject matter experts that we have on our team that are there, so we can, talk business and see how we can provide assistance. And if we're not the right company to provide assistance, that's okay. And we still want to help and provide some guidance and mentorship.
What about the type of industries that people that you're looking to work with? Are there any specific type of industries that you work with?
Great question. We work with companies today, anywhere from aerospace, defense, manufacturing, construction, professional services, IT, environmental, you name it. It's a very broad service offering that we offer, and our support functions and our proposals. Because as you know, Eric, a lot of the times the proposals, yes, there's subject matter expertise that comes into play, but proposals, for the
Right.
most part, there's, compliance, et cetera. So there's a lot of the services that we offer that are able to translate into any industry, if you will. But that being said, we have a, very large client base that is in many different market segments. And so we certainly look forward to being there as a participant for the second year at your conference, and it just looks like, I mean, your entire team's done such, you included, have done such an amazing job in preparation for this, and we can't wait to see you next week.
No. I'm excited, and I thank you as well for participating. We appreciate your support as always. But like I said, for people that are watching this who may not be able to make it and they want to reach out to you, where should they go?
So yeah, so what I would encourage people to do is go to our website at stratgrowthadvisors.com,
Okay.
and reach out to us. Figure out what type of service that you're interested in. Send me a note as well, Eric. You can place my email address, if you wouldn't mind, in the chat for the team. And so reach out to me. I'll make sure that I get you directed to the correct person, because in a lot of times I may not be that correct person. We want to get you to the smart people immediately, right? Let's get you to the subject matter experts so they can work with you on how we can solve any of the challenges that you may have across all the support services that we offer.
Nice. Nice. So going back to your experiences, what have you seen that small businesses where some of the things that they're making mistakes that you think that they can improve? Just, some of those things that you've seen over your 20 years of experience, because a lot of people watching this, they may be new to government contracting. They may have a business that's successful, right? And they're in the private sector and they're like, hey, I want to go to government contracting. Should I get my 8A? Should I get the surge? What is it? What is some of the things that you've seen where people are making mistakes at?
Good question. I would say do your homework on the front end, because I think the answer is, in most cases, does government contracting make sense? I think you can almost say yes, but a lot of times we see, let's say, for example, an 8A. An 8A will get their certification, and we hear this all the time. Year 3, 4, 5, they figure it out, right? Why try to figure it out on 3, 4, 5, right? Figure it out in advance. Figure it out in the beginning. Put some strategy. Put a pen to paper. One of the things I learned many years ago is providing more of a market assessment report and total addressable market, right? If you have a widget that you're selling, who do you need to be selling that to, right? And so there can be a little bit of upfront analysis, very low cost reports that can be generated and developed. And we do this all the time with clients. Now we can tell the clients what to do, and no charge, right? Here's what you need to do. And the hard part's not knowing what to do. It's actually putting in the work to do it, right? With everything else that's on your plate. So I see that a lot of times where people just kind of dive into something and they take off down a certain path. And in fact, that may not have been the right customer that they should have been chasing. Maybe they should have chased a different client. I'll give you an example. If you are a travel 8A, for example, and you're knocking on contracting officers' doors, you probably want to form a little bit of research on the front end to say, has this contracting officer that I'm reaching out to ever even issued a sole source contract, right, to a tribal 8A,
Mm,
regular 8A, right? Because if you're standard 8A, woman owned, whatever the case may be, there's tools out there. It's not easy to figure this stuff out, right? But there's tools out there that you can do some upfront analysis to make sure that you have a solid game plan before you jump in. Because once you jump in, now you start building those costs. Now all of a sudden, now you have a number two that you hired, and now you're carrying them on overhead, and you start to do these things when in fact, I know everyone's eager and aggressive to make it happen, so to speak, but in a lot of cases, maybe a little bit more upfront planning and strategy before you really launch and start to add some of your overhead expenses. It could work out much better in the end for you.
I'm going to share, for those who've not heard, I can tell you that one of my contracts when I was running my construction company, one of my bigger contracts was around $5 million that I was awarded through a tribal organization, and it allowed me to essentially get out of the hole because I was in the hole in my business because of some other bad business dealings in the commercial sector. And they awarded me this contract that was $5 million. It was part of a much larger $20 million contract. And I was able, as a small business, to leverage that to essentially do, more than twice my annual revenues in a single project. And so that was one of those stories that helped me be able to actually start my YouTube channel and do all the things that people know me for. Can you just share in on maybe a success story of someone that you guys work with in a project that you helped them secure that they would not have secured otherwise?
Uh, Many success stories. I'll tell you one that's pretty cool and exciting that
Okay.
just happened last week.
Okay.
Is a contract to provide all of the presidential, and not to get political here, right? So, at the point in time, we knew a new administration was coming in no matter what.
Right.
And
Right.
so the executive office of president needed a team to come in, quick execution, to bring in maybe 30, 40 people that could be part of the transition team for whichever administration came in. So that was pretty cool. We worked with the client and secured that contract. We're in the final stages. We've already received, our client has already received the 8A offer letter. So those of you that are 8A, that's the first step.
Okay.
The government reaches out and submits to the business opportunity specialist. So that's already been received. Pricing's already been submitted. And I think it's supposed to be awarded maybe today so that the team can launch, because obviously there's a lot to do.
Right.
And so that's a pretty cool project.
Nice.
Another pretty cool project, and I think that was several $1 million. But it's like anything else. What I tell people all the time is it's all about land and expand, right? So if we can help get you there, and if you are focused, your job is to expand, right? We're not necessarily attached to every single thing from that point forward. Now we can be if you need us to be, but at the end of the day, if we help get you positioned and you're doing your job right, then you're going to grow that relationship with that program management office. The program management office is going to have other relationships with other program managers that they'll make the
Right.
connections for, et cetera,
Right.
right? You know how that works, and you land, expand, and grow your business. But a lot of times what happens is it's the barrier to entry that a lot of the companies struggle with is, how do I get to that client? Like, how do I get in there, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, what happens maybe is maybe there's some partnering that takes place, and negotiations, and maybe here on the front end, maybe you have to give a little bit more than you'd like to. Maybe you're not getting quite the margins that you need, but it's a progression of growing a business. And so, let's say year one, you're in at this level. Well, year five, now all of a sudden you're the big dog, right? Now you're the guy that's in there. Now you're the guy that's bringing in. But what I always encourage people is, hey, remember how you started, right? Now go back and help that next guy that's trying to get in there. And, by helping that guy doesn't mean that you're giving away all your margins, but, you were at that point once upon a time, and you had the lower margins, and you were making more concessions, et cetera, to get in under, the FAR, and keeping everything within all the contract terms. So many success stories. I could go on for days, and I think we will. We'll probably go into a little bit more granular detail. I'll leave you with one last one. I had a company that was in more of the infrastructure, layer one, layer two systems, and we were able to parlay those services and secure a $25 million sole source counterterrorism contract.
Mm.
with one of the agencies. Probably about a year ago. That's been extremely successful, working with an incumbent work staff, and because a lot of these contracts, for your audience that aren't aware of this, is a lot of these things. There's already people in place, and they may be
Mhm.
with company ABC. And if
Okay.
you put a deal together, a lot of times we call it badge flopping or switching shirts, right? You can do that incumbent capture, keep that team in place, give them a great environment to work within for professional career growth. And it's a really easy way to secure some of those contracts. But there's a lot of nuances that go into this, which we're not going to get in the technical aspect on today's call. But it's certainly something that we could work with the team and anyone that wants to chat with us there at the show next week. Or I'm confident that a lot of those details will be discussed on the tribal panel.
John, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on. You're always doing incredible things. I learn from you. Appreciate all the things that you guys are doing. Again, you know, I know how hard it is to serve a small business community. People say they want to help small businesses, and not many people actually deliver. So I know the work that you guys do. I've worked with you. I'm a client of yours, and so I definitely could vouch for the services as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Thanks for coming on and sharing. And why don't you just leave the small business with some words of advice for them, for those people listening to this?
So, Eric, before I do, thank you. Thanks for all that you do for the small businesses. Yes, you're right. You've been a client of ours for a while, and it's been a phenomenal partnership. And there's tremendous things on the horizon, which we won't get into on this call. But I would say, for any small business owner, we talk about this all the time, and as I talk to people, is just, you know, um, gather the intel, gather the information, and filter through the noise, right? Because a lot of people can get wrapped up in all the noise and all the distractions, and then it gets you off base. And so I really encourage people all the time is grind it out, filter through the noise, and work with people like yourself, like Eric Coffie, and his team, and all of the great material that he has to offer to truly understand this space as you're going through this process. And if you see people like myself or others associated with Eric, they're good people, right? So is kind of stick within that core network and navigate that space versus trying to find a lot of random companies or a lot of random consultants out there. Not that they're not good. I'm not saying that whatsoever, right? But if you've got an ecosystem to work within and there's a lot of good companies already working together, the chances are they're probably already solving a lot of the potential challenges that you may run into at any stage of your growth. And so you've got a great ecosystem here with Eric Coffey and his business that he's built. And so that's what I would say, Eric.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.